I just thought I'd mention we've got badges now, haven't we? So it's good to know. Oh, is it actually live?
Yeah.
Cool.
Go.
You want to start now?
Yeah.
It's not too echoey, is it? All right.
We're live on YouTube, everyone. Say hi.
We're all live.
Then we've got the camera going. So
actually, we can't see ourselves.
No one can see us yet.
Cool.
But let's get it added.
You got the clicker? Is it this one?
Yeah, clicker. That's it. All right. So thanks everyone for turning up. Really good turnout this evening. And we've got a couple of really good talks lined up. So before we do all that, we have to do general housekeeping sort of stuff. So first of all, Lose, if you don't know already, go out the door here, right, left, right.
That's also where the emergency exits are.
And yes, if there's any fire alarms go off, we could talk to Sam, who's here. Sam, where are you?
You just popped down.
Right, she'll be back soon.
Cool.
We follow Sam if there's any issues.
There's also a fire lift, but I forgot which one it is. So I think it's a 33% chance of survival. Is that right? I think. Take the stairs. Exactly.
Yeah, so we're at a new venue. So we need to say thank you to Good Lord for hosting us, and also to
Expertise.
Annie.
Oh, and Annie as well, but Expertise Recruitment. Is that right?
Yes.
Mainly Annie.
Mainly Annie from Expertise Recruitment.
Shout out if you want to, compete.
Annie, do you want to say a few words?
Yeah, just thank you all so much for coming. And oh, hello.
Double microphone.
Hi. Oh my God, this is a bit weird. And this is mainly for the people here, but anyone who would like to talk about new JavaScript roles, come and find us afterwards. And to bribe you for that, we've paid for all the pizzas. So hopefully that helps. But enjoy tonight, and let us know if you've got any questions.
Thank you. Pizza.
Pizza is coming at an unknown time, so we don't jump up from talks and grab it.
8 o'clock.
All right, fine.
We'll see how the talks go. So let's do slides.
Code of conduct first. So code of conduct, if you look on the Svelte Society site or on the Svelte GitHub, you'll find the code of conduct. Just abide by it. Swearing's fine, but everything else on that code of conduct, just don't do it.
Link's there.
Where's the link?
Next slide.
There. All right.
Take a picture quick.
Yeah.
You should all
open your browser.
You should all have read this and understand it implicitly before even setting foot in here.
Exactly. How dare you be here? Right. Safety information. We've done that.
Yep. Good Lord.
Thank you, good Lord.
Thank you.
That's these people, I guess. Some around. Anyone want to wave yet? Cool. In the corner. Thanks.
Okay,
right. Schedule.
So first up, if you were at Svelte Summit in September last year, you'll know the next speaker, who's Bert. He's going to be talking about how to create a flashy ego-boosting website with Svelte and SvelteKit. And Bert's from Ashley Furniture, and he'll be up first speaking remotely from Florida. So Florida man talks about creating a flashy ego-boosting website.
I hear the weather's similar there, so don't be jealous.
And then we've got Matthias from Der Spiegel, who will be talking about data visualization in SvelteKit. Matthias is just here. Say hi. So Matthias will be on after we've got Bert up and doing his talk. So I need to go and get Bert up now. So if you just bear with me.
Whilst we're saying, people organising this meetup, there's a few of us around. Hands up. Cool. So we have badges on called, it says organizer in American English for some reason. So if you need any help with anything or want to just chat, find us, look for the badge. Cool. I think there's no more slides. I'm not going to press it. Oh, there we go. Oh, good silence.
Hello? Hello? Can everyone hear me? Oop, am I good? Oh, I think, okay. Well, if I'm not, someone stop me at some point. I'll just guess I'll go into the show on the road. Hey, let me, my name's Burt Bankson. I'm really excited to be here today at Svelte London. This is a talk I've wanted to do for a while, and I'm just gonna preface this talk by saying I got kind of crazy with it. Stuff's probably gonna go wrong. We're just gonna treat it like a Three Stooges type of routine here, and don't feel afraid to laugh if I mess something up. We're just gonna roll with it. So, a little about myself. Already something's messing up. I'm a developer at Ashley Furniture.
Sorry, could you just give us a minute?
Yeah.
We can't hear you.
Oh, sorry.
I can hear you now. What's going on?
I have no idea. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Too loud now. Where's the TV remote?
I've got it here.
Cool. All right. Good. You can carry on whatever you're doing.
Yes. All right. No, we'll just start back from the stop. My name's Burt Bankson. All right. I'm a lead developer at Ashley Furniture. We're like one of the biggest furniture manufacturers in America. It's pretty fun. It's pretty crazy. There's like 5,000 people on our site any given day, and we do a lot of Svelte there. Right now, I'm happy to say like 90% of our homepage is written in Svelte, and we're just continuing to put more and more. So I do a lot of Svelte things too. Scott brought up my talk from the summer talk, and then I also did a virtual one in spring. I kind of bring this up. I used to be an esports player, primarily in fighting games, and that's going to come in to relevant later in this talk. A lot of what I learned and how I kind of get into web development is through my video game playing, and that's kind of how I frame a lot of my knowledge too. So something I'm just going to probably bring up, something to put in your head for later, and yeah. So the name of this talk is how to create a flashy, ego-boosting, I spelt it wrong, boosting website with Svelte and SvelteKit, or how to make cool animations at work. So we kind of have like this guy right here. I kind of started this talk. When I put the names in, I kind of just have a general idea of where I'm going. And then as I write it, I kind of get closer to where it is. So the kind of main thought of this talk is creating cool animations at work. And so I bring this up. This is my Svelte hack entry right here. This is the Svelte Worldwide component, and it's a globe component that animates smoothly to each country that you pick. And I mean, I'm like, so yeah, we're going to talk about some of the lessons learned of that. And yeah, let's just sit back and have fun. Let's try to learn some things. So this is Svelte Worldwide right here. I was just kind of going to demo it real quick. If you look, you can just kind of see, select a country, it'll animate to it. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the lessons I learned on this, and we'll get to it. So first lesson in this is, what is animation, right? Why is it? What does it do, right? At its core, animation is putting a series of images together that makes our brain think it's moving. So I'll just take off one of my pictures from the wall. So this is like one of my animation boards, as you guys can see here. Oh my God, you can barely see it in the light. But you can see things are moving. You can see the guy over here moving left and right, kind of images. It's just 2 frames, right? But it gives you that illusion of motion. So I kind of wanted to share with you guys here. This is one of the first animations I ever did. This is one I did in high school. This is a PowerPoint. It was frame by frame on PowerPoint animations, and it actually would crash PowerPoint if it went too far. So I kind of was being humble here, showing you where I got my start in this kind of animation game, and kind of telling you guys all, you're going to start kind of slow. You're going to make crappy animations that have like not that smooth, that crash computers and stuff like that. It happens. We've all started there. So let's get going. So, can you guys still hear me? I don't know. Let me just go back to my scene 1. So, one of the things I want to talk about, will you need to know all the stuff that I'm bringing up here today? Probably not. This talk's going to be about a little bit more complicated JavaScript info, like animations. Most of the time, CSS animations do the job far better, far simpler. The only time you really need kind of animation techniques that I'm talking about is when you're kind of doing more complicated animations like Svelte Worldwide. So that one, you really couldn't do that in CSS. We had to calculate where the globe was fitting on it, how it's moving, what geolocation is it. CSS doesn't really handle that, and that's where this stuff kind of comes in. But I'll also say this is still not bad to know about. This is CSS kind of just puts the wool over your eyes and does a lot of this stuff for you. It's good to kind of know how the computer handles the animation, how it goes through, and how it renders the page out for you, because it'll help you make things that are more performant. So we're going to get started here. So I kind of got this image right here. We want to create an ego boosting website right here. So most people just start with a corporate logo. I'm not like that. That's boring. You guys shouldn't be like that. No one should be like that. If you do, it's fine. But I want to make something cool today. So a little demo to start here. I'm going to make a logo of my face right in front of you. So let's just go to my default scene here. And I'm just going to take a frame copy of it. All right. Now let's get back here. Awesome. Looks great. That's perfect. That seems like a great thing for my website. So I am in Photoshop right now. There's probably some other non-Photoshop alternatives you can use for this. I'm sorry. I'm just going to use Photoshop because that's what I know. I'm not a designer. I'm a front-end dev at heart. But let's just get going on this. So I am just going to crop this. All right. So we got an image of my face, and we are going to delete this last layer. And then, yes, and I'm sorry, you can't even see my context menus, but we'll work through it. So you can go up here to select subject from the select bar. And let's hope to God it works. Yes, it did. All right, sweet. I gotta get to select. I am not that good at Photoshop, but this is a pretty easy thing to do. And it's half the reason I did this talk today. So we are gonna go down to our layers and we're gonna hit threshold. And this will apply a threshold, basically limiting the colors to 2 options here. And look at this, already looking great. This is a great logo for any website. We can make adjustments, but I think Photoshop did a pretty good job here. I don't want to select anything. All right. So from this, I can select my layer 1. I am going to select a color range, and I'm just going to pick the black there. And then from that, I'm going to right-click, make work path, and then if nothing breaks, I'm going to come down to the bottom, and then I am going to make a solid color layer. And believe it or not, we already got a logo of our face. So I am going to copy my SVG, and awesome. All right. Oop. I'm going to go to my code view. And so we can see I right-click copied my SVG. I already have this one kind of set up. So I am just going to put this in here. I'm going to get rid of these tags. And I want to take that width and then set to the view box I have up here. So 618, 410. And then take that out. And I am just praying this works. All right, so we got code in there. simple from Photoshop. Let's see what happened here. Let's see if it actually went through. And oop. Oh, nope, wrong one. Might be. Oh, I'm just gonna go see what. Awesome, went in, right? We have a logo of our face. This is something that any ego boosting website's gonna have. If you want to be cool, you're not just gonna put a B up there. You're gonna put a cool logo of your face like this. So one thing we might want to do here is, if we come back to the code view, is make us animated, right? We want people to see how cool we are and that we're kind of better than everyone else because our stuff moves. But we'll go in here and basically we're gonna come here, and this is like how you'd usually start an animation. So right now, I kind of goal here is I just wanted it to rotate on like just a set time invertal, right? And I'll be honest, I just kind of stole code from ChatGPT to do this, but I did have to adjust it a lot. And I mean, you can always come up with whatever idea you have. I always encourage experimentation with how you're kind of editing things, but it's up to you. But this one, I was just trying to get simple for this example, and let's try it. So basically what you're gonna do is put your SVG in there, and then you are going to take the styles and transform them on kind of a set time invertal. So most of the time when you see more intense JavaScript like animations, you'll see this. You'll see them start an animation loop and go through, make adjustments, calculate it, and create like a callback loop, right? And one of the biggest new mistakes I see is right here on this line is a lot of people will just kind of just start callback loop, and they'll get into a callback hell, and they'll blow the stack, right? Because the computer is just going to keep making animation after animation after animation after animation. And so with that, this kind of brings me to my next topic. Hold up, I got to start my utility again.
Bert, can you increase the font size in your VS Code, please?
Yes, I will. Sorry. That's really bad. I know people at my work make fun of me all the time for it. There we go. Oh, this thing was working all day, and then straight when I have it. Oh! Give me a second. I'm just restarting my webcam. There we go. We're back at it. All right. So as we said before, basically, animations are just a bunch of frames in your head that kind of we put together to create the illusion of movement. So with this is this concept of frames per second, and a lot of people are already pretty aware of this, but go over it for the people that know. So basically, it's the amount of frames that our displays can display in 1 second. So most displays are 60 FPS, so they display 60 frames in 1 second. One of the things you need to know about FPS is that the higher FPS, the more smooth the animation is going to be, right? Because there is more frames, more detail, right, for our human eye to pick up within a second. So I have this animation. I don't even know if it's playing. It's not playing. Sorry, but that's something to remember is frames per second basically outline how smooth our animations are going to be. So I'll kind of go into like, what does this all mean? Well, we only need to calculate updates to our animation 60 times per second, right? So for optimal optimization too, we should calculate it right before the frame is painted. No timeouts. And luckily the browser has something to help us with that. So if we go on back to my code view, if you guys can all see it, right? A lot of people, when they're trying to do this, they will sit there and they'll make a mistake that I see a lot of people make, and it's set animation 10, right? So they'll set like a timeout, right? This delays the animation. It's not going to blow the stack anymore. It's going to wait like every so milliseconds. But the kind of problem with this is it might work like most of the time, but it's not the most efficient, right? You're not catching the frame like immediately before it's rendered. Sometimes you could get like off balance with the frame, and you'll like have these like weird skips in your animation. So you should always use the browser default request. And take that out, right? And so request animation frame, what this does is quite awesome. It sits there and it creates a callback loop that's called right before the frame's painted, right? So we can be guaranteed that this is always going to run at 60 frames a second, right? So every 60 times a second, this callback's going to run and the animation's going to update. That's going to guarantee the maximum amount of smoothness. So if we, oops, sorry. Oh my, if we come back to our animation here, right? We can see it like start to move. It's pretty smooth, right? It's going through. People come to the site, they would be like, wow, their brains are going to explode. But one of the problems we have here is, as you can see, I went through OBS and I had each of these limited. So I had this one limited to 15 frames per second. I had this one set to 60 frames per second. You can see that they move at a different pattern. They move, one moves like slower than the other, right? In the same amount of time. And this is actually a pretty big problem in computing. And it's something that's actually kind of like a funny thing that's happened between Europe and America. So if we continue on, oh, I'm sorry. Dude, my camera just ran out of battery like right before this ran. I'm sorry. So right here is the, over here is like the PAL kind of specification for how digital TVs run. Basically, this is how the TVs in Europe worked. And if you read this kind of Wikipedia article, one of the funny things about it is that PAL actually ran at 50 frames per second, whereas most of America, including Japan, had NTSC, and that ran at 25 frames a second. Well, that ran at 60 frames a second. So if you kind of look at this has created some like funny things in video games. Mario Kart, people actually play on the PAL version because it is slower, but that makes it easier to play. So a lot of people are adjusting the time between PAL and NTSC. Video games run slower on PAL because they have a lower frame rate. So if we kind of come back to this animation here, we can see why this is happening, right? It basically just means that if you look at it, right, this thing's running every frame. And I'm just gonna update. Dude, I am so sorry, guys. My camera just ran out of battery the second we started. Let me just add a. Sweet, it's like nothing happened. So if we look at this over here, right, remember that we're running this animation 60 times per second, right? With that, we are kind of tying the speed of the animation to the frame rate, right? So if we have 60 FPS, right, when we take this delta and update it by the rotation multiplier and set the variable to be like higher or lower, or update it, right, it's going to go as quick as we get frames. So if it's 90, it's going to be faster. If it's 15, it's going to be slower. And that's something that we shouldn't have. And it's actually a really cool kind of fix that you can do in SvelteKit for this that I kind of found accidentally while doing the Svelte Worldwide project. So if we continue on, this is another kind of cool example of where this happens. So sometimes this bug can actually be used to your advantage. So this is Street Fighter 2. And if you know anything about Street Fighter 2, they had like the original version that was like extremely slow, right? And that was an extremely popular game. But one of the things they did was speed it up. And you might be asking, like, how could they do that, right? With like the 60 FPS limit that they have. Well, what they did is they actually just upped the FPS to 90 internally. So they rendered frames 90 times a second, and they would just throw out like, I think like at 80 FPS, they'd throw out 1/3 of their frames, and just to get the animations quicker. So if you look at both of these, they both run like display at 60 FPS, but the one on the right, Street Fighter 2 Turbo, is running 88 frames per second internally, a higher frame rate, and it runs faster. So sometimes this bug can kind of be used to your advantage, but I would say nowadays on the web, most of the time, you do not want to get this bug. So I'm kind of going to go over how I fixed this in the Svelte Worldwide project. So I have my code right here, and kind of the meat of it is this guy right here, Svelte Tweened. This guy works really great. He's basically a store that updates on a duration to its next value and returns a promise. So what's great about this guy is he works on time, not frames, right? And he updates his value on that time. So if you look at this Svelte Worldwide project, you can see I have my in animation here, right? And I will go to that function. It's actually quite simple. When we update the animation here, we're only tying it to the tween. The tween is the guy who updates it. And this is really good because it takes the frame out of it. The tweens only get update on time, not frame. And that's going to fix the problem between the frame rate. So I actually went over and updated it here on our code for the animation. So you see I have the delta X and I have the delta Y, and I set them to two tweened variables. And they have a duration of 2 seconds, right? And all you have to do is just set a promise. I have a promise set, go forward, one back, and then return null. And that is actually going to fix our problem just like straight out. And you can see right here, I then update the animation. Now the animation is only set by the tween, which has nothing to do with the frame. We don't update the tween on the frame. So the animation is no longer tied to the frame rate. So if we go back with this fixed code, you can see, yeah, like the one on the left is still kind of choppy. That's going to happen at 15 FPS. This is more kind of for your example here, just to kind of show it. But you can see they run at the same time now. One's not quicker than the other. And so you might be asking, like, why is this so important? Well, a lot of the times it's like preservation. Frame rates for screens are getting higher and higher. There's 120 frames per second screens that come out now, and they're just getting higher and higher. And if we don't set our websites to work with whatever frame rate, they can break. And we've actually seen this in the past of a lot of video games that have been hard to preserve because they require specific frame rates that are hard to replicate. So that's one thing. It's like always keep in mind when you're making animations like this is not to have your animation tied to the frame rate, because it makes it more fragile and just it could just break in the future, and then we can't even preserve the work you have. So this is kind of my last animation here. You can see I went through it. Probably gonna add some more stuff later, but I'm hoping you guys kind of learned a little bit how to make like a cool animation of your face and make it very smooth. And I'll just and I'm just gonna fix my camera. All right, sweet. I'm back in. So with this, there's some other things you might want to consider with the animation. So a lot of times is if animation is controlled by the user, right? So if you, for example, in the Svelte Worldwide, people could select country, right? We want to make sure if they select something different, it can be interrupted gracefully, right? It looks nice when it gets stopped and it goes to something else. A lot of people tend to forget this, and their animations kind of stop and judder and go somewhere else. So I'll move on here. You can kind of see if we look at the Svelte Worldwide, right? When we update it, I can kind of sit there and just spam them, but it keeps updating. It doesn't jut to the next one. It doesn't stop, right? And I'll kind of go over how that happens and how we kind of did that. So if I come back to my code here, the kind of main meat of this, right, is these lines right here. So if you're familiar with how the data structure of a stack works, basically when I run the animation, I have two animations, the in animation, the out animation. Completing the circle, right, creates a full animation. So when the user changes the country, we basically take that country and then add it to the top of the stack, and we wait for the current animation to be running. And if we finally like get all those animations done and we get there and that country has been changed, we basically throw out the animation and not do it. And this is very important for performance too. You don't want like 5 animations running at the same time. That can cause things to lag a lot. That happened when I was writing this. I had multiple kind of animations running in the background that was causing it to judder, causing it to move, and it was just being like extremely slow. And that's one of the things you always got to remember about animation, especially with these kind of intense JavaScript ones where we're calculating, you know, the globe position and all this stuff, what country it is in a 60th of a second. We want them to be quick. We don't want useless stuff in there. So that is one thing to consider, and this is kind of a practice I would recommend, and it works great with the Svelte tween stores. You can just sit there and you can see my animation. I just set it to the tween set right here and wait for it. And once it's done, I can wait for that promise and know that's completed. So that's something that I would definitely recommend that you always are aware of when you're building animations, especially ones that users can interact with, is that, you know, they can stop, they can start gracefully, right? If the user wants to like select something else real quick, it doesn't judder or cause like another one to run in the background, that you're being the most efficient possible. So oop, actually not done yet. Another thing you might want to consider here is making it more accessible, right? So some people don't want motion within their, you know, like they get motion sickness and other stuff. So a great thing you do, we all know the CSS rule. I guess a lot of people probably know that prefers reduced motion, but for things like this in JavaScript, you can also do this. You can do the window.match media. You can put a reactive variable and you can check it. And then you can just basically say, if it is reduced, don't play the animation, and give people the option to opt in or opt out of it. So that's another great thing to consider, and something I would really recommend. With that, is there anything else I really had? No, I'm sorry. This is a really fast talk. I kind of got crazy with it. I hope maybe you guys learned a little bit maybe something about like video game history or something like that. I'm sorry for the technical problems. My camera just ran out of battery, but I'm hoping I kind of like let you guys in how you can make some cool animations in JavaScript, how you can keep them very like smooth, and how Svelte helps you with that, how Tween and other Svelte stores and just having the Svelte reactive variables can help you do that. So with that, I would like to thank the guy who made this OBS, even though it didn't work that great, the guy who made this OBS project, he actually made it in Svelte. That's pretty cool. It actually is a WebSocket that updates my OBS and just changes the scenes for me. It's been very useful for this project. And with that, I just want to thank you guys for this. Thank you guys for having me. It's been really great being here. You can check me on Twitter, or you can check out the Svelte Worldwide project if you want to see more of it. I'm going to be happy to answer questions later. And thank you for having me.
Thank you, Bert. Thank you.
Bert, can you hear us?
Yes, yes.
Cool.
Awesome.
Should we do some questions now?
That was awesome. The best bit about that was Florida man in shorts.
Come on, that wasn't the best bit. That wasn't the best bit. The logo was amazing, right? Let's face it. So when's that going on Ashley Furniture's homepage?
Oh, one day,
Cool.
hopefully.
I look forward to it. Amazing.
So anyone got any questions for Bert? No questions.
No questions. How do I get my face on the internet? Hey, question. We've got a microphone.
Mateus is so you have to repeat it.
I'll just come be really close to you. It's all right. We do this a lot. Hello.
Hello.
All right. Oh, we're the same height. That's good.
Great.
Okay.
I have a question about the. So I haven't used Svelte at all before. I'm not really into the front end too much.
I'll stop hugging you.
I thought you were going to leave me there. Yeah.
No, I'm going to leave you. I won't leave you. I won't leave you.
So when you mentioned the tween stuff, so I'm guessing that handles the like the delta time for the entire animation and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So is that a specific Svelte thing, or is it just like?
That's actually, yeah, it's a Svelte. It's like actually like baked into Svelte is the Svelte Tween store. It's
Oh,
right
okay.
there. If you're like used to the transitions, it's like right there with those. It's basically just like a store that is built into Svelte that helps you move between two values and a certain time frame.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Between 0 and 1.
Yeah. All right, cool. Yeah. I was just a bit like confused about like the delta time and how it's handled in the thing, but I think that answered it. Thank you.
No problem.
Awesome, thank you. Any more questions? Don't worry, I won't come that close, I promise. I might, but.
So like, not really a question, just want to say that I tried to solve this problem like a month ago and I was doing it all manually and I completely screwed it up. And I was building the whole website in Svelte. It didn't occur to me to use a store. So that is genius. And I'm going to go and update my app to work properly now.
Oh,
thank you.
Dude, no, thank you. That means a lot. That's awesome. That's so cool.
So you'll see this face. Hang on, there we go. All right, any more questions?
Anyone ever needs advice on how to make a logo of your face, there's some more techniques. I know some hidden things. It's a new thing I'm trying to get started, a new trend. It's gonna be the next Bitcoin is making logos of your face. So if you need any advice, let me know.
Wait, isn't the next Bitcoin AI? Surely
yeah,
it's the
probably.
one
After that, next one.
All right, any more questions? No? Okay. All right. Matthew Stahl, are you ready? Do you need a podium? I don't know what you call it.
Thank you so much, Bert.
Yeah, thank you, Bert.
Thank you guys for coming.
Sorry, I just got a Blue Sky invite, so I'm well distracted right now.
Where's your screen, guys?
Yeah, it's coming. Oh, give me a second.
Don't rush the poor man. Come on. Well, I can sing if you want. No, I can sing. No, it's good. It's a scene setting for YouTube. It's great. I need some shorts.
I meant that in a non-nutritious patronizing way. Absolutely fine. So if anyone needs the toilets, out through the door, right, left, right.
Yeah, there's a new bottle of white wine on top.
Everyone's cool with being
On camera. We're not using actually. We're not turning the camera much. We can do that. Cool. If everyone's cool, I can turn it. This is really cool. I want one of these at home. How cool is that? I'm wearing the Svelte Origins t-shirt, by the way, just, you know. Oh, it's quite hard to control. It is. Hey. I'm trying to center it now, and it's really hard.
No, it's fine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Just press that one. Hold it for a second. Cool. I'll turn mine off now. Thanks.
Okay, my screen should be hit there now. Cool. All right.
Matthias, do you want to say a few words just to make sure everyone can hear you?
Yes. Can you hear me? Seems that the screen sharing is not really working. Just stop screen sharing again.
Oh, okay. I think you guys can hear it as well. No, I can't. No, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay. Do you see the presentation full screen now?
Yeah, sure. There you go.
Oh, it's not showing up full screen. I'm not sure what's happening here because
Not showing.
when I share, I get a presentation here full screen and here nothing.
Anthony? Anthony?
Wait, we'll do it like that.
Anthony?
Wait, I start the presentation first. No, wait, we do it like
You
that.
go back
we
to
do it in window.
where you were.
So now it works probably.
Right, so select entire screen, yeah, allow. Right, and I'll edit in.
Yeah, let's do it like that. Yeah, I run it in the window now because when I full screen it, it's gone. I don't know why. But yeah, I think it'll work. I'll anyway switch to the code editor in between. So it's fine. All right, ready to continue? Cool. So hi everyone. I'm Matthias and I am from Hamburg in Germany. And today I want to talk about how Svelte has revolutionized how we build data visualizations at Der Spiegel. So who of you is knowing what Der Spiegel is? Oh, quite some folks. Okay, cool. Yeah, so it's a weekly news magazine in Germany. We have a print issue still, but there is also a website, which is I think the 4th most clicked website in Europe or so. So it's quite a large platform. But I want to start with a little introduction about myself. And as I'm into data visualization, I visualized my career path here. And I started out a couple of years ago with studying biochemistry. So I was into the natural sciences. I even did a PhD in biochemistry. I don't know why, actually. But after that, I moved into bioinformatics. So I left the wet lab and moved into the so-called dry lab, where we programmed a lot with like the languages R and Python, and also starting with JavaScript a little bit. And I think it was there when I first used Svelte in 2019. And I used it for this static figure that you find in a print journal now. And probably this is the first and only appearance of a Svelte static figure in a natural sciences paper. Who knows? Anyway, while I was doing bioinformatics, I really got attracted by data visualization because when you do data analysis, you also do a lot of data visualization naturally. And I was intrigued by that mixture of art and design with statistics and data. And then there's also human psychology, how we read visualizations. And so I thought about it quite a long time if I should leave academia and start my own business. And after I had thought about it for a year or so, I set out to do data visualization as a freelancer. And I worked with my own company for a year or so with different companies around the globe or organizations, institutions, universities to build interactive data visualizations. And almost all of them are built with Svelte, of course. And one of those early things here, you can see here very small, is you see that these are always very creative data visualizations because as I said, I love it to bring art to the data. Yeah, and after a year of freelancing, I got contacted by Der Spiegel, the news magazine, if I want to go there and do data viz for them. And actually, I'm leading a team of 18 people right now at the graphics desk at Der Spiegel, and we do all the print graphics, but we also do all the online graphics. And most of them are simple bar charts and scatter plots, but like 20% or so are very creative projects that we publish on our website. So we build in our team a lot of data visualizations. We have 4 developers. They all use Svelte 100% of the time. And let's just have a look how that looks like in the end before we go a little bit into the code of these visualizations. So that one, for example, is a visualization we built a year ago. And each dot here on this map of Germany is one person who died of COVID-19. And the challenge was to visualize this large number of 100,000 deaths that we had at that time in a different way. So not just showing the curve that everyone knows and how many people are dying every day, but bringing the topic much closer to our audience, showing that each of these data points in the data set is a real human being that you can see here with the dots. And people can also see that this is not happening somewhere in Germany, it's happening right next to their door, basically next to their house. And this was a very successful story. Got read by, I don't know, 200, 300,000 people or so within a day. Then talking of globes, Bert, we also do a lot of 3D data visualization. And here shout out to Svelte, which is really cool if you want to do 3JS stuff in Svelte. So we use that as well. So here you can see air pollution data worldwide, where we have all the reporters that have their observations, and we connect their observations in this article with this interactive globe, for example. And what we also do is more funny stuff. So this is a project where we visualized all the Nobel Prize laureates that we had since 1901 when the prize was founded. Every circle here is one Nobel laureate, and with the circle you visualize again, it's one human being per circle. And now you can take these circles and do different visualizations with it. So this is like using age histograms or different clusterings, phyllotaxis layouts of these circles for different arrangements, for the categorical variables. So where are they from and where have they done their research and so on. And this is all completely built with Svelte, and of course using a lot of tweens that Bert also introduced. Yeah, and we do also static stuff with Svelte. So this was a project about air raid sirens in Ukraine. So here you can see like one turn in this spiral data visualization is one day, and then the different hours of the day. And whenever you see these red marks here, you know that an air raid siren in a certain city in Ukraine was going off. So this is just for 2 cities here. And yeah, we built that for the website spiegel.de, and that gets around 200 million page visits per month. And that's just the homepage, and then you have all the articles where we build our data visualizations in. But the website as such is not built with Svelte, but our data visualizations, they are built with just core Svelte. So we don't need SvelteKit here because there's no routing. We're just injecting our little parts into the website via direct embeds, or sometimes also via iframes. And yeah, I already told you that we use Svelte for everything here. And I think it's no surprise because, as you might know, when Svelte was developed, Rich Harris was still working at the New York Times, and he exactly had a very similar or same use case, building data visualizations there. And he built a Svelte framework actually for that. And so there is a lot of things included in Svelte where you can see it was built for data visualization. We'll see that in a second. That's exactly why we use it. We use it not alone. We use it a lot together with D3. So who of you has used D3 before? Quite some people. And how do you like it? Yeah, medium. Yeah. So I often get asked if in 2023 you should learn D3 from scratch without looking at any frameworks. And the clear answer is no, because D3 is so much easier when you learn it together with a framework, let it be Svelte or whatever. Because Svelte and other frameworks are pretty cool in managing all the DOM states and transitions and stuff like that. And then you just look at D3 as a function library, and you just pick the stuff you like within Svelte. We'll see that in an example later on. And so you don't have to learn these update patterns, select stuff that D3 is coming with to manipulate the DOM itself, because you don't need that anymore. It's much easier to use Svelte. And with Svelte, you are able to do declarative coding. So you can, when you have data visualizations, you often use SVG as your basis to produce the graphics in the browser, and you can just write your SVG in HTML code. So you don't need these imperative calls that you have in D3 where you say, do this, do this, do this, and you never know how it's going to look like as HTML code later on in the browser. All right. I think every one of you knows how Svelte is really working, or do we need a little primer? Medium? Okay. Who's for a little primer, how Svelte components work? Okay, cool. Then we do that. That's fine. Yeah, so Svelte, as almost any other framework, works with components, and you have a component hierarchy. So you have a root component, and then you can build a lot of different subcomponents. And every component is basically consisting of just one file. And these files, they have a JavaScript part here at the top within the script text. They have an HTML part where you write your HTML, and they have a CSS part where you do all the styling, which is scoped to that component. And all that together, you see it here in this example code. It's just an HTML file. There are some specialties, so you can already see that here this count in the main element has these curly braces, and that means that Svelte, as a compiler, is thinking now, okay, this is a JavaScript variable that we already defined here on the top. So Svelte will just output 0 here on our web page because it's evaluating what count really is. And if we take that a little bit further, we can put in a set interval function. I don't like that much, but for this example, it's pretty nice. We can build this set interval, which is just increasing count every second. And the reactivity now that count is changing is detected automatically by Svelte now. So what we'll see on our web page is something like that, a number which is increasing every second by 1. Because that connection, that count is now a reactive variable, was just evaluated at build time by the Svelte compiler. It's a little bit like Excel, right, where you have different cells that are maybe connected through a function, and when you change one of the cells, all the other cells that are connected change as well. And we can do something like that as well. So here I introduced this double count variable, which is just count times 2. And with this $colon, we make this a reactive statement. So that means Svelte is running this line of code whenever count is changing again. So that we get this output here, so that count and double count are updating in parallel. And this $colon is actually valid JavaScript. It's called JavaScript labels, but not used anymore. All right, that's the basics. And well, there is a little bit more, but that's just that's just the most important stuff to know for what's coming now. And I will explain the rest with a real example. So I told you that we love Svelte. We use Svelte for everything. And today I want to show you just 3, or let's say at least 3 tricks why we love it and why it is so perfectly suited for doing data visualization. And one is measuring dimensions for responsiveness is pretty easy. So if you want to know the width or the height of your container, even when the width and the height of your browser window is changing, that's just one line of code in Svelte. We love it for data loading and parsing because you have Svelte stores. We'll see that in a second as well. That makes it pretty easy to manage your data, especially when you have a data visualization. Data is important. And we love it for the D3 integration, or more generally for the integration of any JavaScript library, which is out there. And I will show you how we integrate D3 into Svelte. So, and for today, I was this morning thinking of a good example for a simple data visualization that I could show where we can go into the code. And I was browsing Twitter, and it was quite funny. I got this ad this morning where I could win a house in Cornwall, and I heard Cornwall is not too bad, but pretty expensive, I thought here. And I thought, well, there must be data about median house prices in the UK. Yeah, actually, I found some data. I found data about median house prices, which is here on the y-axis, and I also found data about median earnings. And how that's connected in every local authority in the UK. So every dot here is one local authority. And yeah, and the interesting thing was this data was there for different years. So I thought, maybe we could like program an interactive visualization where you can switch between 2 different years and see how earnings and how house prices change. So that's what we can do today. So, but I want to know first from you, should I show you the completely finished application and just go over the code, or should we code it directly live?
Live coding. Live coding.
Okay, now I've lost. All right. I've prepared something.
Yeah.
So let's see
Easy
if
to be.
that's working here. Yeah, nice.
Oh.
Okay. So I prepared the project, which is right now looking like that. So everything is there, unless the data visualization. So this will be somewhere our scatter plot here on this black area. We already have a title and a subtitle. That's important, at least when you do data viz for newspapers. And we have the source, pretty important as well, from the ONS here. And then we have the possibility to switch between 2 years, but right now nothing is happening. And what I think would be really cool if we can have a scatter plot with these like house prices versus median earnings that changes between these 2 years, and maybe the dots could also move around as we had Bert's talk about the animation and transition. That would be pretty nice, of course. So let's see how this project's looking like right now. So we have a root app.svelte. Let's make that just big for now. Can you read that in the back? Yeah, cool. So we have here already our app.svelte, and you can see here on the very first line of my JavaScript part, I'm already importing data from a data store. And that's the first thing I want to show you, because I told you we love Svelte for the easiness of loading and parsing data. And so let's directly go to that store/data file that's here. And sorry, I skipped TypeScript for today, but to make it not too complicated. But here, this is everything we need to load our data. The thing is that here in the public folder, I already have this data.csv, which has all the data. Here you can see the different local authorities, and we can see house prices, earnings for different years. And now I want to read in that CSV file. It could be somewhere on some server. And here you can already see the second point, how we integrate D3 into Svelte, because now D3 is just a function library for us. And we just import these two functions here at the top from D3. And we also take the readable function from the Svelte stores. And now with these 4 lines of code, we just build a data store where all our data in a good format is in. So what you do here is we initialize a readable store. It has an initial value of just an empty array. With that, nothing can go wrong. Even if the data loading takes a lot of time, we have an empty array. So if our data visualization is now dependent on some data array, it won't be undefined or null or whatever, and something is going wrong. It's just an empty array. Nothing is happening. So we are avoiding errors here. And then we use the syntax here. So we have a function which gets the set method here. And then we load the data with this line of code. And this is using D3. So D3 has the CSV function. D3 has the CSV function where we put in the path of our data, and we can also put in that autotype function, which does automatic parsing of the data for us. So autotype looks, if there is a number, then make a JavaScript number. If there's a string, then a string, and so on. And if we got that, so you see, we await that because it takes time. And if it's there, we use now the set function that we get from Svelte here and just set the value of the store with our data array. And yeah, to demonstrate that, what we could do now is we could just do a console log of our data. And to access the value of this data store, we can just put in the $sign here. And you remember, we make a line of code reactive if we put that dollar label before. So that means whenever now our data store is changing, we get another console log. So let's see what's happening here. Oh my God, we get an error. So let's see what's happening. So a refresh is often a good possibility. Let's make that. So here you can see that we first had an empty array, and then we have an array with 330 entries. And if, wow. You're pretty happy that it works now. Okay, cool. And then we have here an array of objects, and each of these objects has like earnings in 2012 and 20, house prices in 12 and 20, and we have the name and code of the local authorities. So that's fine. That's what we can work with. And we never have to take care about our data now. It's not important to know when the data is loaded, because everything which is now dependent of that store is alerted when this array is being filled, because the store is reactive. All right, cool. So let's remove that. And let's have a look what's happening here in the HTML part before we look a little bit closer at the JavaScript part again. So this is now the HTML part of our Svelte component. Here you see there's a header component where the header is in. Then we have the select component. The select component is just here, this one. And the select component is telling us which year was selected, and I can just bind that property to a variable selected year. So this selected year is just changing every time when I switch to the years. And then we have already the chart component. That's not working right now as it is empty, and we have the footer. So let's see what we're doing here in the JavaScript part. So we start with a selected year of 2012. That's fine. And then I have some reactive statements. So these two here are just determining which X and Y value range we have. So from where to where do the prices go? From where to where do the earnings go? And that's just to know that I know how to scale the chart later on. And then we have here this selected data variable, and that's just making sure that the right data is now put into that selected data variable, depending if I've selected the 2012 or the 2022 data set. All right, and then we put all of that as properties into this chart component. So the chart component gets the selected data, gets an X range, gets a Y range, and that's totally sufficient to build that chart right now. I guess you're curious how this chart component's looking like, so let's go there. And that's pretty small right now. The only thing I prepared is here the different properties. So with this export statement, you just define the properties in the Svelte component. And then I already defined an object here with different paddings that we have around our chart. And then I have these width and height variables, but right now the width and height is not determined anywhere, so they are just left undefined so far. And here in the HTML part, we already have set up our SVG. And there are some possibilities to work with relative values in SVG. So if you want to know more about that, then Google layer cake or pancake for Svelte. Today we work with absolute values because usually also for these more creative visualizations, you have to work with the absolute pixel values in SVG. And so SVG needs a current width and a current height, but we don't know that right now. So we have to grab it. And the best thing is that we use our wrapper diff here and just ask, hey, if you have a width and height of 100%, which actual absolute width and height do you have? And we do that in Svelte by using bind client width and set that to width. And equally, we use client height. That looks good. And with that, I can use a static HTML attribute like client width and client height, which all the divs have, but we are not reactively coupled to it, right? But with this bind directive, Svelte sets up all the magic to reactively connect now our width and height JavaScript variables to the actual width and height that we get. And we can just look at that if we do another console log. And let's just put out the width now. And then you can see the width is first undefined because the component is just mounting. Then we get a width of 565 pixels. And when I change the width here, you can see it's just updating all the time. So yeah, that's the point. Measuring dimensions is pretty easy in Svelte, and that's you need that all the time when doing data visualization. And also, if you think of our millions of page visits that we have, there are quite a lot of people doing the transition from portrait to landscape view on mobile, for example. And this is also changing, of course, the width and the height of all the data visualizations. For that, it's also pretty fine to know your current width and height. All right, let's get rid of that. Next thing is now we need a translation between our data and actual pixels, because if we want to put on like the dots now in our scatter plot, we need to know at which pixels, X and Y coordinates, we need to put the dots, right? And for that, we integrate again D3, because D3 comes already with translation functions. So we could just use scale linear from D3. And we can build again reactively, because we want to be dependent of the width and the height. We could just build an X scale. And that's working like that, that I just call this scale linear function. And that takes a domain, or has a domain method where we can just put in the data. And if you remember, we got that X range already. So that's the range our X data is going. So we just put that in there and we translate that into pixel values. And the pixel values, should go from a padding dot left to the width of our available space minus the padding dot right. And that just translates now the data values, so like the earnings in pounds probably, into pixel values. And we just can do the same now for the Y values. So we do a Y scale, and here we put in the Y range. And now we are running not from padding dot left, but we are running from height minus padding bottom, because the SVG coordinate system is on the y-axis inverse to our scatterplot coordinate system. 0, 0 is on the top left in an SVG. That's why I'm just reversing that here. And we run to padding dot top. And with that, we have an X scale and a Y scale. That's functions again. And these X, Y scale functions are recalculated whenever width and height is changing. What we need now is we need rendered data. So we need now our data array, but not with the actual values, but now with the X and Y coordinates. We can do that by just taking the data and run through every element here. And it's always a good idea to just return everything which is already there. And on top of that, we have now an X value. And for that, we use our X scale function and put in the property of our data. And I have no idea how that's called right now. So let's just have a look first how the data is looking like that's going into the chart component. So that's our data. Let's refresh. That's it. And every element here, well, it's called earning and house price. So the earning should go to the X axis. So we put that one here. And we do the same for Y. Here we use the Y scale and then house price. Was it house price? It was house price, yeah. So that means now we have, additionally to the data that we already have now X and Y coordinates. Let's see if that worked out in the end. So here we go on data. And now, yeah, you see that we get here X and Y It's interesting that we have here a minus y value, so let's see what's happening there. But looks right what we've done here. All right, good. And so let's go to the SVG. Now we want to have 330 or something. How many was it? 330 dots on our scatter plot. So what we can do now, we can use an each block. So we can loop over our rendered data. That's what's called. And let's just call that D, or even better, we can already destructure that object here. So we could pull out the X value and the Y value, and maybe we pull also out the LA code, which is a unique identifier. And we close the loop like that. And we put here in brackets our identifier. It's always a good idea to do, otherwise magic things can happen. And then we want to have our dots here. So we want to render one dot per item in our array. So what I can do now is I could just use a component here, dot component. I already prepared that. I show you how it looks like in the end, but let's just put in our X value. Actually, I have no idea which properties I have. So the dot component takes an X, a Y, and an R, which is the radius of the dot. And it also takes a name if we have one. So let's also pull out the LA name. And then we say, okay, X equals X. There's also shorthands for that, but I'll be very explicit now so that you can follow easily along. Then we need the radius. Let's fix that to 10 pixels right now. And we can fill a name, and that one is an LA name. And dot is not defined yet because we have to import it. And I always do that at the very top. So let's import dot from dot.svelte. Let's see what's happening here. Ah, that's looking nice. So maybe radius 10 is a little bit too much. What we can do is we could also make that reactive. So let's make it dependent on the width and just try something like that. Yeah, that's looking good right now. So we have now this dot. So how does that work? Let's have a look into the dot component. So it's just having these import or these properties here in the JavaScript part, nothing else is happening there. And then we have for each dot, we define a group. And that group is translated to the correct X and Y position that we get from outside. And then we have a circle which gets the right radius and has a center at position 0, 0, because the group outside is already positioned to the right coordinate. And then it's just some styling going on. So we have a fill of a color and a little bit of opacity. And that's basically it. And if we move here that around, so you see errors going on, let's refresh. If we move that around, you can see that it is adapting to the width and height that we're changing. Even the sizes are changing. All right. So now let's see what's happening when I select a different year. Wow, that's working. Good. I have luck today. So we see that it is more expensive to buy a house in 2022, and earnings are also a little bit higher. That's nice. Now, it would be cool to have that as a transition. That's what we do last. What we quickly do is we add some axes, because I already prepared them. So let's see if we get an x-axis. And import a y-axis. And then we can just use them in the SVG as well. So let's draw them first. So let's draw an x-axis and a y-axis. And this is not happening without parameters. So every axis takes a scale. The x-axis takes the x scale. and the y-axis takes a y-scale. And then we also need an offset to position the axis at the right position. And let's just set that to 0 right now and see what's happening. So if we put that in, yeah, we have axes now, but they look a little bit at the wrong position. That's exactly what this offset here is doing. So the x-axis needs to be at the bottom and not at the top. What we can do here is we could use our y-scale, and we can call the range method on the y-scale, and this is giving us an array with the full pixel range starting from going to. That's D3 magic, and we can just use, I think, the second element of this array for the first. Yeah, it was the first. Now our let me just close the dev tools here. So now we got the x-axis at the right position, and let's do the same for the y-axis. So we use the y-scale, the x-scale here, range, and probably it's 0 as well. Yeah. So now we have the axis, and now we know what's going on here. Last thing, what's missing is now the transition, and that's pretty easy again. You could use tween here, and you can tween the x and y coordinates, but you don't have to actually, because the nice thing is that we have declaratively defined our circle here and the group, and we could use just CSS to move between the different states. So everything we have to do is here in the style. We call our group and say, hey, do a transition on everything, what's possible, and do that over 400 milliseconds maybe. So let's see if that's working. Yeah. So now, okay, I make it a little bit longer that you see it in the screencast as well. Let's make 1000 milliseconds now. So if I switch now, we have a transition over 1 second. That's it. And here it is open sourced.
Thank you very much. Now, if you love it, live coding is very brave, and it worked. So that's like an extra credit. Well done.
Perfect audience.
Didn't all turn to disaster. Questions before we have pizza? Don't worry, it doesn't say the pizza. Right.
I also stick around afterwards, so
I'm going to lean over you. It's a different pose every time.
Yeah. My name is Greg. Thanks for this presentation. Do you use any other graphic visualization tools apart from the tree, and why?
No. We do, but for the static stuff, we use Adobe Illustrator, things like that. But for coding, we use Svelte plus D3. And sometimes we have WebGL as well. Then we use Regal, for example. And that also works perfectly together with Svelte. But Svelte is involved at every time.
Cool, thank you.
Okay, so there's one from Script Raccoon. So why is CX equals 0 and a transform preferred over CX equals X in ..svelte?
Yeah, that's a good question. It works with CX equals X as well. And I guess that's a data visualization developer thing. You always try to wrap everything in groups because you usually, or in other words, the design of a data vis is not finished when you start coding. You do a lot of design when you code as well. And when you have a group, you can do everything you like. For example, if you want to add now the labels for the different regions, you want to know like this outlier dot, what it is, then you could put in that label also in the group, and the positioning of the label is already done. That's why I always use the groups here. But for that specific example, it could have been done with the CX equals X as well. Hi.
I was trying to surreptitiously move the camera around.
Fantastic. There's not a lot of surreptitious in this camera. It's, okay, any other questions?
So do you always declaratively call D3 from within Svelte, or have you created some kind of wrapper library for it? It's always manually calling D3?
It's always manually calling D3, like the way I showed you there for the CSV function or for the scale linear. It's always like that. And I mean, we have some like standard components like these axes, where we have just the component library and just put out the full component, but the component as such is pulling in D3 functions.
So there's no parallel to like thread or anything like that for D3 that you know of?
No, you don't need that, because D3 is a little bit different, I think, than 3.js here. I mean, D3 is really just a very simple function library in the end. It's not rendering stuff.
So I'd like to ask, it's all statically rendered, all the data on the Spiegel, is that right? Or does it come from, like, where's the data come from? Is it, do you have to go to an endpoint, or is it all, built up front?
Yeah, in most of the cases, it's just a static file server where a CSV is located or a JSON. There are rare circumstances where we have dynamic data, for example, when we have an election and data is changing all the time. Then we want to use a database here, but what we do right now is that we call the JSON like every second or so. That's also working with the stores, for example, pretty good. But yeah, in most of the cases, it's just static data.
And it's all D3, you're saying? There's no abstractions on top of that?
No.
Any intention to use any of them, or the team are all D3 hardcore?
D3 hardcore. The thing is that every project we have is different. So I showed you a few examples in the beginning. And D3 is quite low level, of course, but that means that you can realize all the things that you imagined with pen and paper before. So when we start a project, we always begin with pen and paper and sketch which visualization would work with the data. And D3, with its low level, just make sure that we can build it in a very short time.
I found that really awesome, just how you could piece that together so quickly. So I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, pizza is here. We should probably eat it. So go ahead. I think afterwards probably we'll go to, there's a rooftop garden that no one knows about apparently, kind of opposite. So yeah, thanks for online. You can come too, but you have to like travel. There's a rooftop garden across the road somewhere, so we'll find it and we'll go there.